Hello, thank you for tuning in to Pasadena Public Library's video tutorial for the simple landscape painting using watercolor pencils. This is an activity for beginners. We will be primarily experimenting with blending colors and application methods. First, for supplies. You'll need watercolor pencils. You can use any colors you would like, but in this video, we will be using orange, magenta, green, blue, red, and brown. You'll need a paintbrush, some painter's tape, and water in the cup, and watercolor paper. I've cut a sheet of paper into thirds, but you can use whichever size suits you. First, I am going to tape the edges to the table. If you don't have painter's tape, you can paint without it, or use a larger piece of paper or tablecloth behind the watercolor paper. Or you can use other tape, like masking tape or transparent tape, but be extra careful when removing it later. I am taping off just about 1/4 of an inch on each side. Next, I'm going to draw something that looks a bit like a mountain on the middle of the painting. This will be my guide. You can use any color you would like, but I'm just going to use green here because we'll be painting over it later. Next, we are going to lay our colors for a sunset. So I am going to use orange and just color it pretty heavily in the background. Coloring sideways using your watercolor pencil will get the color on the page much quicker. So I'm going to lay just orange on the top of the painting here. I'm going to color in the sides here. And next I'm going to lay down some magenta, just blending it in. Blending in on the edge there, at the top. Adding some in the middle. And just however you would like your sunset to look, or your background to look. I'm gonna go ahead and add some red. So if you want the color darker, you would obviously just add more color pencil or watercolor pencil onto the page. But just be careful about adding too much because sometimes it's difficult to get that pencil look off of your page. Sometimes it's difficult to blend that in. So I'm just adding more orange here. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more red. Just right in the middle. Again, you can use whichever colors you would like. You can blend it in. And after we activate the watercolor pencil, you can always add more colors on top of it. Next, we are going to put some water on our paintbrush and just paint over our painting with water. Again, we are blending the colors together. You can see that nice orange coming off the page and the magenta blending in with it. This is a pretty light background. If you wanted it darker, you can go ahead and add more colors on top of that wet paint or the water. But here we are just activating that watercolor pencil with water. Just be careful about putting too much water on your paper because your paper can start to peel. You can always dab it with a paper towel, but that could also smear your painting too. So just be careful if you're doing that. Again, I'm just getting more water and trying to blend the colors in a little bit better to make it look more like paint rather than color pencil. Next, I am getting my brown watercolor pencil and just using a wet brush to wet the tip of the pencil and to pull that color off of it. So what I'm doing here is just making that middle area, the line in the middle, the guide, just adding some wet paint to that middle area there, because what we'll be doing later is using the pencil directly in that spot. Here I'm just using my brush and using the water, flicking it upwards to make it look a bit like a mountainscape. You can probably make this part darker, but I think I'll just leave it right here for now. And using the tip of the watercolor pencil, I am going to just draw trees, a bit like Christmas trees, just across that edge there. Now what I'm doing here is that the paper is a little wet, so I am just coloring directly on there. But if it gets too dry, you can dip the tip of your watercolor pencil directly into the water and just shake off the excess just a little bit and continue drawing the trees there. So I'm just going to draw this all across the edge here. Now you could probably just get a wet brush and add more water to your paper and draw that way as well. Or you can continue dipping the pencil like what I'm doing here. So just continue drawing the trees across your landscape there. You can draw some in the background. Next, I am getting my green watercolor pencil, and I'm just deciding on how I want to draw on what I think will be snow here. So I'm going to add a couple more guides, just some wiggly lines in the middle, and adding a little bit of green at just very lightly at the top there. I'm going to add another guide right there and color that in. Another guide on the right there and color that in a little bit. Next, I'm getting my blue and will shade in on one side of that guide there. I'm just going to shade it in sideways using my pencil and just add a few colors there. Shading in just below that other line and a bit of an angle down at the bottom there. Just applying color to the paper. Same thing with the right side, using that blue and shading in, just using those lines that I drew. Applying more color, just a little bit more. I'm also using the green to give it some blended colors with the blue there. This is the green, just shading in the top, and then a little bit in between of the blue. Next, I'm getting my paintbrush, put water on it, and I am just applying water across the colors to activate the green and the blue watercolor pencil down at the bottom there. What I'm doing is just using a paintbrush and dragging it across the lines. I'm starting at the line and dragging the brush across so that it takes the color through the white portions of the paper. Using water, same thing at the bottom there. Just starting at the line and dragging it across. Now I'm using a wet brush, starting at those lines there because I wanted to retain some of those definition that I added in there with the colors. Otherwise, the whole bottom portion would just be one color, which is fine, but I wanted it to look a bit marbly at the bottom there. Next, I am getting the blue pencil and just adding more color on top of that wet paint. So again, drawing over those lines I made earlier, just to highlight some of those lines a little bit more. Then I'm going to get my brush and run it across the colors once again. And you can do this as many times as you would like to get the color the way you'd like it. Just again, be careful about your paper starting to peel, because that will happen if the paper is too wet and you run it across too many times. I'm just using the brush bristles to give it that flaky look, I suppose, running it across the colors again. So you can continue adding color to this if you like. It's easier to add color than it is to take off. So I am just going to add a little bit more orange at the top there. Adding more color. I mean, you can keep working on it until you're happy with the color. Just going to blend it in just a little bit. So once you're done, you can start removing the tape off the edges. Again, carefully peeling away the edges. It's best to pull the tape off away from the middle of your painting so that you don't tear into it, which I have done a few times before. Peeling off that last edge there, pulling away from your painting, and you're done. And there's your finished painting. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out more activities on our YouTube page at Pasadena Library. Thank you.